So glad to see everybody's faces, both in the room and on Zoom. I have a monitor right in front of me. It means I can see everybody. I don't have to crane my neck up on the screen behind me. So that's kind of a nice new addition. Yay. Yay, yay, yay. So, hey, sunny day. Isn't that a nice change? Love the rain, but it's always nice to see the sunshine as well. I want to remind our Zoom participants to please mute your mics unless you're speaking, so that we don't get any background noises for anybody. Oh, I'll let them close the door because we're getting background noises here.
Wow. Oops.
I have a couple of quick announcements, and then a couple of the board members have announcements. First off, I wanted to let you know that the Diamond Valley Writers Guild is now a member of the Hemet-San Jacinto Valley Chamber of Commerce as a nonprofit organization. So we are supporting the community in that regard, and they're supporting us. They've been sending out our flyers. You know, again, we're trying to expand our reach locally. During the shutdown during COVID, we lost a lot of live attendance, as some of you know, because people got out of the habit. Zoom was easier. So we're starting to see a lot more activity of people getting out of their houses, getting away from the keyboard, and attending live. Hi, good to see you. Anthology update. We're in the developmental editing process. Most of the poems, I think, are edited. If that's not true, give me a thumbs down, Kay. Kay is our poetry editor. Thumbs up, she's mostly done. And we're in the middle of the prose. Prose takes a little longer. So if you haven't heard from us, be patient. We will get that out to you as quickly as we can. It's a process. Shout out deadline. Lynette, would you like to take that one?
Good morning, everybody. We are still doing our monthly shout outs. We've just shifted the date a little bit. Now what we're doing is we would like you to send in your blurbs, links, purchase links, and cover photos by the 5th of the month so that we can send them out by the end of the same month. So if you've got something exciting going on, book signing, a new book coming out and everything, the information that goes out to our mailing list will be a little bit more current, won't be that lag time of about 3 weeks. So we're excited about that. It's still a work in progress, but I think I'm getting it under control. And if you have any questions, feel free to email the Guild email address and we'll get back to you.
Hey, Lynette, can you let them know what sorts of things they can turn into you for the monthly shout out?
Oh, absolutely. If you've got a monthly blog that you're doing, send us a link. We'll share that. Any kind of books, awards, book signings, anything that's writing related that you want others to know about. We have a very large mailing list. I think it's over 300 people, isn't it, Michelle?
450.
And there you go. That's a great outreach, tell a friend. So we want to celebrate your successes with you. So let us know about it.
Excellent. She's doing a great job, isn't she? Thank you. So you want to give them a little heads up on the poetry?
Yeah, this year we are going to change our poetry month. I'm really excited about everybody who submitted poems to the anthology. And what we would like is for you to come and share them with us. So usually our poetry month is in August, but we are going to move it this year to April. And the reason we're going to do that is because April is National Poetry Month, both in the US and in Canada. So I think that will give us more opportunities to share and align it a little bit more with national celebrations. So if you're a poet or you're thinking about being a poet, or if you have a favorite poet, because this is all about celebrating poetry and things that make, words that make our hearts move. So be ready for that in April this year.
Excellent. And do you have a deadline for when you want to be notified as to someone wants to be put on the list?
I think, let's see, I don't know. April meeting is probably around the 15th. So let's say send in your desire to read by April 1st. So we'll say April Fool's Day. How's that?
There you go. And one more thing, just a reminder, when it comes to our live reading events and our publications, our anthologies, you must be a paid member to participate in that. Everything else, our meetings are open to any writer, whether you're a member or not, and our membership fee is $25 a year, so it doesn't break the bank. But to read, you do need to be a paid member. Website update. Kevin, do you have anything exciting to tell us? You always have something exciting to tell us. He's in Canada, by the way. I bet you it's cold up there.
Yeah, minus 27 Celsius, which I did the calculation is minus 17 Fahrenheit. So, as for the website, I've been doing a bunch of redesigning. We've gotten rid of the forums because nobody was using them anyway. And I've instead made it so that members can comment on other posts. And I've added a bunch of FAQs areas for how to add your books to the member books area. And I'm currently also making a set of rules to add your shout outs also that way. And then we can immortalize your shout outs onto our website too. So that'll help automate some of that stuff. And the other part that I was going to mention is that we now have a store and we have merchandise like a shirt, like shirts and coffee cups and stuff like that. So we the company that we use, Cafe Press, they do all of the customizing, the shipping, everything, and we just make a small commission off of every sale. So that's just another way that you can support the guild. That's
And
all
they
I've
look
got.
great. As you can tell, model, put the cup back up again, model the cup. There we go. I want one. I haven't ordered mine yet because I was on vacation, but I am going to. So if you go to the Cafe Press store, the link is on our website. There is so many different products you can get that has logoing and branding for Diamond Valley Writers Guild. And again, what a wonderful job Kevin is doing. I'm telling you, we have an amazing board of directors. We have very committed people. I just want to give him a round of applause. Thank you. Membership benefits and renewal reminder, Jessica. That's you. Yeah, she's coming. This is our treasurer, so she takes care of the money. Here she is.
We're moving through the agenda very quick today, and I was playing with the cameras. Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to see so many good faces here. It's exciting when there's the room full and Zoom full and all of that. So I am your treasurer, and so it is my favorite time of the year, which is tax season. I'm kidding. No, it's not tax season. It's renewal season. So membership is $25, and you don't have to be a member to attend any of the meetings, but if you want to participate in things like the anthology or in the shout outs or have your books or your blogs put onto our website, you do have to be a member for that. So it is a good program. It's only $25 a year. We don't charge you monthly. It's just a year, and that covers all of our expenses for everything we do here, including the hybrid system. So if you want to help out and you want to join a great community of writers, beginners to advanced, anything like that, come see me in the back and you can hand me cash or a check. The other way you can pay is through sending to our P.O. Box 1154, Hemet. And you can send a check through there. The other way is through PayPal. And you can either send that to dvwritersguild@gmail.com, or on our website there is a direct link where you can purchase a membership. I think that's right, Kevin, that's set up. So you can purchase membership directly through there, and it gets put right into our PayPal. So please become a member or come talk to me or any of the other officers, and we will be able to give you more information on becoming a member. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Again, round of applause. Oh, you shouldn't have sat down so quickly. Do you want to do volunteers or should I? Here she comes.
It's me again. All right. So if you like to become a member and you like what we do here so much, I have a wonderful opportunity for you. All of this meeting is not possible without the hybrid system that we developed just post-COVID and during COVID to keep our meetings going. So everyone on Zoom, the cameras, the projector, everything we do here is possible because of the hybrid team. And if you want to help out, you want to learn how to run a switcher or set up a camera or tape down cables, you can join the hybrid team. We meet about 8 a.m. every Saturday morning before the meeting. So you're only here about an hour and a half early. The more people, the quicker it's done, and sometimes we have donuts. So if you want a treat and you want to give back to the guild, that's the great way to do it, is volunteer. So please consider. We also have other volunteer positions open. Hybrid is always looking for more volunteers, but we also have things for like the anthology, if you want to be an editor or a reader or help with, creating the cover. We are always looking for more volunteers in all the projects that the guild has going on. So if you're interested, please come talk to any of the board of directors and we'll give you more information on that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So at this stage, I want to do a shout out to the hybrid team in the back row back there. I don't know if on Zoom, if any of you can see them. We have Aiden von Weckman, who's in the far left corner hiding. He's an amazing poet and he's here every third Saturday, helping roll out cables and set up cameras. Next to him is our secretary, and that's Sophia Barber. Again, she's here early every time. Next to her is Liam Bruce, and yeah, he's okay, you know. And tech guy, and just all around guru. And then there's Jessica Bruce, and she does everything. And I want to let you know, we're very, very blessed to have a couple of people on that team that professionally do this. This is their day jobs involve cameras and, you know, working for like Riverside Television, working for production companies in Los Angeles, and working on film and television things. So this is something they volunteer their time to do, but you would be learning from the best. If you want to learn what we do here, you know, they know what they're doing. I also want to do a quick shout out to Angela Little, who is in the front row on the far left. She's amazing. She shows up, she does everything. She unrolls cables, she tapes them down, she says, where do you want this plugged in? And again, you don't need any training in advance. We will train you on the job if you want to come in and help. Yeah, we have a lot of, you know, fun in the mornings listening to very lazy music while we're doing that. Okay, member successes. This is one of my favorite parts. So what we're looking for is for the members and non-members, anyone who's on Zoom or in the room, to share any recent successes. Did you have a book launch? Did you have one come out? Did you guest as a speaker on a podcast or a guest on a podcast? Do you have a blog that came out? Did you start a project that you've been putting off, or finish a project? Or finish a chapter? I don't care. Anything that you can say as a writer, I did something today. Did you actually sit down and turn on the computer? That's a good one. Who would like to share? Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to share? Come on, somebody has to have done something last 30 days. Go ahead, Kevin. Unmute.
Well, I write stuff every month because as most of you know, I'm a serial publisher. So people subscribe to my site for chapters every month. So I pretty much have to have a chapter out every month. But over the past month, I've been revamping most of my stories into a new software program. And it's made my life a lot nicer and easier. And it's called Living Writer. If you haven't checked it out, they have a 14-day free trial. But it's kind of cool. And in doing so, I've done a lot of editing and reposting of some of my older chapters to my readers and subscribers. So it's kind of fun.
Very cool. And imagine you're getting good feedback on that? Good. Excellent. Thank you. Anyone in the room? John, are you getting up? Are you going to go to the mic? Yeah. Okay. John's Colonel Mack is coming on over here. He just got to grab his book. Anybody, while we're waiting on John, is there anybody on Zoom who has something else to share? Anybody? Just wave at the camera or raise your hand or something. Okay, if not, John, come on up.
Hi, everybody. I'm John McBurty, AKA Colonel Mac, and I got a couple things to share with you. I literally write books. I crank them out about every 2 or 3 months. In December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, I finally got my first children's book done. This was 2 years in the making. So that's the first in the series. I've written 51 stories. I've got 15 ready for illustration, and I'm trying to track down illustrators, which is difficult. Because typically in the traditional publishing world, the publisher provides the illustrators and the staff. In the self-publishing world that I'm in, I have to find my own. So illustrators are tough, but this is a cool little book, and it gives a story. It's a humorous story. My whole family's in it. That's my dog and my grandsons, and it gives a life lesson for children. So it's funny, and it's a life lesson. And Claire learns that she's not to leave. An announcement, not a picture. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, get me on a mic. You know, you want to shut me up. And then I also, on Christmas Day, I put out this veteran survival guide, and this is a self-help book, first in a series, for veterans that transition from military life to civilian life. So this was, and I had a Purple Heart recipient, Chief, who's chairman of California PTSD Foundation, and he was like my co-author. But this is just routine business. The big announcement is, all right, should I read it? Because I paraphrase.
Summarize.
All right. Well, I've been working at this for a couple of years, and I've been writing forever. I finally got my first award. The Department of Veteran Affairs was 6,400 applicants across the country with 116 VA facilities that participated, and somehow I won the first place for creative writing. Yay. All the 6,400 applicants also involved performance in artwork and in various types of writing. And then I was awarded the Therapeutic Art Scholarship and been invited to attend a week-long, fully funded National Veterans Creative Arts Festival, where they have a bunch of workshops and a big award ceremony. So, yeah, I guess the lesson learned is if you keep at it long enough, you'll reap the benefits. So anyway, thank you for listening.
Congratulations, John. I'll tell you, he is one of the most prolific writers. Every month, he's got something in the shout out that a new book just came out. You're very fast at writing. Any other announcements, project starts? Anyone out there that would like to say something? Anybody in the room? Okay. One more quick thing. There are other writers groups that are within drivable distance of this room. Not for a lot of you on Zoom, unfortunately. So I wanted to give them real quick pitches. We've got the California Writers Club that meets on the fourth Saturday. You're still meeting fourth Saturday, right, Sam? Fourth Saturday in Ontario. What's the location? Ovid Family Library. You can find them online. We might even have a link on our website. I'm not sure yet. Also, tomorrow is the Temecula Valley Writers and Illustrators down in Old Town Temecula at the City Hall. First Sunday of the month, California, or the Writers Coffee House down in San Diego. It's a long drive, but it can be worth it, and a lot of talk about the actual business of writing goes on there. So if you want more information, reach out to the Guild, and we'll make sure that you know where to go for these things. There's a lot of resources out there for writers if you're willing to plug in. So it's kind of important. If there are no other announcements, we'll move on the agenda to our writing tip of the day. Do I see anybody? Last call for announcements, anyone? Okay, well, one of our wonderful members, S.K. Murphy, is an author and freelance writer who writes the occasional poem when she is overwhelmed by the beauty of nature. She has earned a graduate degree in literature, but more importantly, she has fostered and rescued many dogs and cats. She's a proud member of the Diamond Valley Writers Guild, she said. She wrote this, I didn't, so it wasn't a plug that I put in there. And I just want to thank you for doing the tip today. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Hi, crew. Can everybody hear me? I just unmuted myself. And also, just before Michelle announced me, I also just had a sneezing fit, which is why my camera was off. So I'm still recovering from that. Okay, 3 cautionary tales this morning, and I will try to do them within 5 minutes. Number 1, cautionary tale. This is your friendly reminder to back up everything you write. Back it up, back it up, back it up. As my mother told me long ago when I was learning how to drive, always make sure your spare is in good condition, which was a good life lesson. She said, no one ever expects to have a flat tire. No one ever expects their computer to crash. I have a desktop computer and I have a laptop computer. And 2 weeks ago, my printer had been offline for several months. Long story, not important. And a couple of weeks ago, a friend came over and she was going to finally get my printer back online with my laptop and my desktop. I went to boot up my desktop computer and it died. No worries. I have most of my writing stuff on my laptop, at least my newer writing stuff. And I have an external hard drive, which I backed up. I started thinking just recently, wait, was that last year? Was it the year before? was it during COVID? Might have been during COVID. And then I realized I hadn't backed it up for a long time, which made me a little anxious. But Sandy came over and she said, don't worry, I'm going to do this and this and this. And she removed my hard drive and she took the information off my hard drive and she goes, we'll put all the stuff from your hard drive onto your laptop. Yay! I was so excited to do this. And we sat and she was here for a couple hours and she was downloading stuff onto my laptop. Where do you want your documents? I want my documents with my documents on the laptop, but I want my music and my pictures on this little thumb drive. Okay, we'll do that. Talking more, telling stories, talking about writing. It was great. And then she left. And then the next day, I opened up my laptop to get a file from the old computer, the one that died. And I thought, that document, that poem is going to be right here because now it's been transferred onto the laptop. None of the documents from my desktop were on the laptop. None of them. They were nowhere. As much as I had told Sandy 3 times, music and pictures on the thumb drive, documents on the laptop, we're all set. And we'd had this long conversation about what to do with my hard drive. You sure you don't want it? No, I don't want it. And she goes, okay, I'm going to take it in my garage and pound it with a hammer and destroy it. Okay, that's good because we now have all the information. None of the documents were there. And I had that moment of grief thinking, okay, maybe some of them were on the external hard drive, maybe. And then I thought, okay, maybe she just wasn't listening and she put the documents on the thumb drive and I stuck the thumb drive in and all the documents were there. Do you feel my relief? I know you do. Poems that I had written years and years ago that I have printed out, but retyping all of my old poems would have taken forever. Anyway, back up all your files. When I was working on my middle grade novels, daily, every single day, working on a middle grade novel, at the end of my writing session, I would email the file to myself. If you don't want to take the time to back it up on an external hard drive or someplace else, the quickest, best way to do it is just email it to yourself and it's always going to be there. So that's just my little reminder. When you go home today or when you leave the meeting, back up your files. Number 2, cautionary tale. When Sandy was here, she scolded me. She always does for having Chrome on my laptop. I use Chrome as a browser on my laptop because I use Blogger for my blog. Long story there. But normally on the desktop, I would use Firefox or DuckDuckGo. Why? Because they don't track your information. They don't track what you're doing. So just a little anecdote in relation to that. I was talking to a friend the other day and she said, so about privacy, she had heard a rumor that a veteran had committed suicide in front of a VA hospital in mid-January. She wanted to find out if it was true, so she went on her computer and she Googled man suicide. I don't know what she put in, but something to that effect. Man suicide, veterans hospital, something. Because she wanted to make sure the story was true in order to share with her son. The next day after she had Googled that, she received a phone call on her cell phone from a number she didn't recognize. Her phone didn't identify it as spam, and so she wrote down the number from her cell phone, and then she went online to a search engine, I don't know which one, and put in the phone number to see who owned it. The phone number went directly back to a suicide hotline. Why they were calling her? They didn't leave a voicemail. Nobody said anything. She said it was the most eerie thing because somehow it had gone from the search engine that she used, which was Google, and her personal cell phone number had been used by someone to call her from a suicide hotline. Now, maybe it's a good thing, and maybe they were trying to make sure that she was feeling okay. I'm not sure. but we're writers. So we're constantly Googling things or using a search engine to look for things. So that's just my cautionary tale about using Google, using Chrome. You might want to use DuckDuckGo or Firefox or some other search engine to look for things. Okay, number 3, really quick. As long as we're talking about online things, here is my advice about taking advice from social media. On Facebook, there is a group called Writers Helping Writers, and I belong to that group. And I, for the most part, enjoy reading the posts of that group. And occasionally I will comment if someone asks a question that they need help with. Just let me say that just because you scuba dive does not mean you are certified to instruct other people in scuba diving, if you catch my drift. So sometimes if someone has a general question, for example, hey guys, I've got writer's block right now, what should I do? And people chime in and go for a walk, or write around it, write everything else you need except that scene, or whatever, eat some ice cream. That's all good advice. But if they ask a specific question like, how do I use a semicolon in this particular sentence? Or what royalty should I be expecting from J.P. Lippincott? You might want to get a more accurate answer than just everybody chiming in what they've heard here and there. You might want to actually do the research if you have a specific question. So I guess what I'm saying is take with a grain of salt what you get, and also remember with those posts, advice posts from other writers, there are always the people who are really quick to offer an answer because it makes them feel important. And they may be off to the side just Googling what the answer to your question is. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of times when you Google something, what you get is not a link to a website that will give you accurate information. It is, in fact, an AI, an artificial intelligence answer that is a summary of what people are saying. So again, cautionary tale, instead of just using what artificial intelligence tells you or that other person on that website, maybe just do a little homework really quick to make sure you're absolutely accurate in your craft. Okay, that's it. That's me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Kay. Actually, those are incredibly good tips. And we need tech tips, we need writing tips, and there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to what does and doesn't work for writing. Okay, now we're going to move on to our guest speaker, which a shout out to Lisa for being here on such short notice. Our scheduled speaker ended up with COVID and needed to cancel today. She is going to reschedule. She will reschedule, but we don't know for when because her schedule is pretty busy. She flies all over and speaks. And actually, Lisa knows our other speaker. So when I reached out to Lisa 2 days in advance and said, can you do a similar presentation? Here she is. She's going to be speaking on what the heck is going on, the world of publishing and the vast options available to you. Lisa Diane Kastner is the founder of Running Wild LLC, a content creation, distribution, and licensing company featured in Forbes and several other publications. She's been named to multiple best ofs, a technology leader by day, and for the last 20 years, she has helped organizations transform by leveraging technology and process. A writer and editor for more than 20 years, she has identified talent like Jamie Ford's Hotel at the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, Reuben, Tihi, Hayslett, Dark Corners, Suzanne Samples Frontal Matter, Glue Gone Wild, Shay, Galloway's The Valley of Sage and Juniper, and most recently, Aimee Hardy's Pocketful of Teeth, which had been named Best of the Year by Kirkus Reviews, and many others whose work has been groundbreaking in their respective genres. Lisa began Running Wild with the belief that we can change the world through storytelling. A noted storyteller in her own right, Lisa's own prose has been called groundbreaking and urgent. So without any further ado, please welcome my good friend, Lisa Kastner.
All right, I found the mute button. Fabulous. All right, first win of the day. So first I want to thank everybody for having me here. It is always an honor to be in the room with other, or remotely, with other writers and those in the writing world. I want to start off by asking, who here has been like traditionally published? And when I say traditionally published, I mean like one of the big houses, like a Penguin or a Simon and Schuster, something like that.
Anybody on Zoom, just wave at the camera.
Yeah.
I know Kay has. Anyone else?
Okay. And who here's been published by like a traditional small press? Okay. And who here has self-published? All right. I'm just trying to get a gauge of the room. So cool. All right, that helps me a lot. Awesome. All right. So I know one of the first things that happens when, and understand, like I've been a writer for potentially far too long. Like well before there was self-publishing, well before we saw this like a huge blow up of small presses and all these alternative ways of getting published. And so back in the day when the thing, what everyone's huge desire was to get traditionally published and then go off and on your, and go to your castle and have this $1 million lifestyle. You're the next J.K. Rowling, you're the next, Stephen King, you're the next whatever. And the world is wonderful and the sun rises and, that was the perception, at least. Again, hope, and I know that a lot of us still continue to have that. And mind you, what I just described, I would love for that to happen. Like, how amazing would that be, right? All of a sudden, you're a billionaire, right? But the reality is that oftentimes what we need to do is take 100 steps back and say, okay, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And that can actually be really, really, really confusing. So what I want to do is walk through with you some of, in summary, basically, the primary ways that you can publish, and then talk with you a little bit about, like, so what are your personal goals? What's your objectives? And potentially what avenue, what methodologies or tools would be best for you to accomplish those goals. Cool? Now, also remember, I take questions. I'll take questions along the way, and I'll also take them at the end. So whatever you're most comfortable with, it's all good. I know Michelle's amazing at managing the room. So if anyone in the room, you have a question, she's also fantastic at getting me to shut up and getting your question in. You can also just go ahead and put it in the chat because I can actually see questions for the chat. So just putting that out there. Okay.
Perfect. So don't be afraid if you have a question, raise your hand, get my attention or get Lisa's attention. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And go to the
Awesome.
mic. And go to the mic if you're in the room.
Yes, because then that way it'll be easier for the recording as well. So cool, cool, cool. Okay. So honestly, the world of publishing is evolving constantly. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well in terms of what we're even seeing with major authors and the various things that they're doing and how they're getting their own work out. But so like, let's first look at the primary venues for publishing. And so I'm going to start with the big 4 or 5, right? So the traditional publisher. The major players in this space are really like Penguin, Random House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Hachette, Macmillan. And so what does that mean? So a big house, they're gonna insist that you have an agent. You can't go to them directly. Typically, they're very I want to say they're very commercial based. So what I mean by that is they have a whole team of people who sit down and figure out, okay, what is going to sell really well in whatever it is that they're specializing in, whatever that imprint is specializing in. So, because understand that these large houses, it's not like you'll see Penguin and that's it, right? If you go and you search on Penguin, what you're going to find are dozens, if not hundreds, of imprints that Penguin represents or has ownership for. And each one of those imprints will have their own mission, vision, and strategy. And so they'll have their own focus. And so each one of those imprints is going to say, we are specifically looking for, and I'm making this up, right? So let's say there's a romance imprint. That romance imprint is only going to be looking for romance stories with this kind of protagonist, this type of antagonist in this type of storyline. So you would not want to submit a horror story or a horror novel to a romance imprint, right? You want to make sure that whatever you're planning on submitting to them fits within their mission, vision, and strategy. And the agents that you're going to be approaching are going to be aware of that. And so you're going to want to, and actually it's another good question. Who here has an agent? Okay, cool. So when you're looking for agents, that's another one that you want to be aware of, right? You want to make sure that you're approaching agents who represent or work with the type of publisher that you're interested in working with. And the reason for that is they're already going to have relationships with these houses, right? And so they will actually be able to guide you in how to pitch or what they are specifically looking for, how you may want to adjust whatever it is that you're writing so that it fits what they are looking for. Does that make sense? Okay, I see some head nodding. Cool. Now, what's the benefit of this? Typically with large houses, you're going to get a bigger, what we call an upfront. What an upfront is, it's basically, it's almost like the house is placing a bet. And they're saying they're going to bet that based on sales of similar works, your book is going to earn out. And what earn out means is that the book is going to make all the money back that they invested to get your story out to the world. And it'll also make enough money to cover that upfront amount, right? So in other words, let's say you wrote a romance thriller because, hey, why not? And the house says, okay, here's $5,000 up front. That means that when they actually sell the book, they're going to sell enough books that will cover all the like $2,000, which is very, very low, just as FYI, that they invest up front. It's going to cover the $5,000 that they gave you up front, and they anticipate that it's going to actually sell more. And the sell more, that percentage of that's what royalties are, right? Royalties are a percentage of the money that they have made from the additional funds that they earned by selling your book. Now, what's great about this as well, they already have pre-existing distribution methods and a decent marketing team. So if you want to have a really broad reach, and that broad reach includes libraries and schools and bookstores and large retailers, right? Then you really want to look down the path to the larger houses. So I'm going to take a pause and see if there's any questions on the line. And Marco said basically in advance. Correct. An upfront is basically in advance. Yep, 100%.
Anybody in the room with questions at this point? I don't see anybody, Lisa.
Okay. And by the way, I fully acknowledge I'm throwing so much information at you. If your head's spinning by the end of this, I suggest actually just watching this again later, after you've had one or two margaritas, and then that'll kind of help you, or like a chilada, right? It might help you sort of digest it a little bit more. So, okay. So the next base is small presses. And so that's, so what is a small press? Now, I actually found this fascinating. I did a search on it because I was curious from a revenue perspective, what's the difference between a small press and like a commercial press? So before I go down that path, so what is a small press? So small presses tend to be, excuse me, by definition, it's a smaller house. They publish less books per year, meaning like less titles, right? It's typically run by someone who has been in the industry. I don't want to say a long time because that would be misrepresentation, but typically it's someone who had a vision or they had an idea or a concept and they thought, you know what, I think there's others who probably have something similar and I'd love to get their work out. You will get a much smaller advance if you get an advance at all. And typically it's going to publish fewer books. They have a smaller marketing team. And they typically have less funds up front to spend on things like marketing and sales, right? Now, I just made this sound horrific. But the reality is that what's great about small presses is typically you'll have a lot more creative freedom. You will have a say in things like cover design. You will have a say. It tends to be a bit more collaborative, meaning like in terms of your interactions with the publisher. You're going to typically have a little more personal attention because it's smaller. Oftentimes those houses will, they'll treat you more like you're part of a community. And what's also now I actually think this is cool. You will have the ability that you'll have a greater say, most likely in things like marketing and sales, right? Because what happens with the larger houses, they tell you have no say typically on cover design. You have no say in terms of format. You have no say in terms of sales and marketing. They'll want to know that you have a great platform and that you know what you're talking about and that you're willing to go out and talk and do things like this, right? But in terms of approach and things like that, it's highly unlikely that you'll be a part of that, right? You'll be a part of that decision-making process. It's only once you're an established entity will they actually come to you for any kind of engagement in those things. Again, versus small presses, it tends to be it's much more interactive. So Kathleen Osborne says, so for either smaller major publishers, do any take books that have been self-published and what makes you established? That's actually a great question. I mean, once upon a time it was considered a huge no-no for a small press or a large house to actually take a previously self-published book. That has changed dramatically. And I'm going to give a couple examples in a minute, if that's okay. But that's actually a fabulous question. So, okay. I'm actually, before I go on to hybrid, I want to stop for a second and see if anyone has any questions.
Doesn't appear to be anybody in the room. You've got them all.
All right. Okay. No one's asleep yet? Like everyone's still awake? I can't tell.
Lots of heads shaking on the asleep comment.
All right. Okay, cool. That means you're not asleep yet. All good. Okay. So the next version is a hybrid publisher. And what a hybrid publisher means, so a hybrid is you are actually putting in an investment into the work itself. So you're probably, and they're also investing funds in it as well. It used to be hybrid publishing was really poo-pooed in the industry. Um, what I'm seeing is it's becoming more and more acceptable to be a hybrid publisher. So, one that I actually had the honor of being on a panel with is She Works. Once upon a time, She Works, it wasn't as well known. Now you're seeing like they've got works that are being acknowledged in reviews that again were typically considered you had to be part of the industry, right, in order to get reviewed by them. And they've actually had some works that were also named like Best of the Year by Kirkus Reviews. So again, it used to be considered a no-no. Now it seems to be becoming much more acceptable. So whereas with a small press or commercial press, you would get paid. The reality is with hybrid up front, you're probably going to put in some amount of money in order to subsidize things like marketing, publicity, and things like that. Now, hybrid publishers do also have a mission, vision, and strategy. It's probably a little bit broader than what you would find with like a commercial press, like one of their imprints. So an example is She Works. I believe they recently rebranded themselves, and I'm not going to remember the name of it. I had too much BarCon during San Francisco Writers Conference, so it's affecting my memory. So, and anyone who doesn't know what BarCon is, you can ask at the end, and I'm happy to explain. But they just repackaged themselves where they are only publishing works by women over 50. And they're still going to be looking for they are still looking for great writing, great storytelling, but because what you see especially in more of the commercial space, so the big five or big four, that there tends to be less of a representation of women over 50. They identified that gap and they're filling that gap, right? So benefit, really, again, you're going to get a lot more personal attention with a hybrid. It's more of a partnership. They'll help you. They tend to kind of help you figure out like how you want to approach things, again, from a marketing and a PR perspective. They're probably not going to have a very big platform in terms of distribution. And that's the other thing with small presses. And by the way, you want to do research on every place, every house that you're submitting to, because you want to make sure that you understand what their distribution channels are. You want to understand their approach to sales and marketing, because you want to make sure it aligns with what you want to accomplish. So like with small presses, some small presses are with large distributors. Like Running Wild, we actually are with IPG, which is the third largest distributor in North America and Canada, I believe. And IPG actually distributes to schools, libraries, bookstores, retailers. They have relationships with, all the major distributors like a Costco, a Target, a Barnes and Noble. They have relationships where we actually do have our books represented, the ebooks especially, across the country in libraries, right? If they do not have a major distributor, and you're going to get that as well with the large houses, if they don't have a major distributor, if they're distributing through Ingram Spark or through Amazon, you're not going to get necessarily your book into libraries and bookstores. Into libraries. You're not going to get it into schools. And it is highly unlikely that it's going to get picked up by major retailers. But if they are with a major distributor, then that major distributor also brings with them a sales and marketing team. And so that small press and that large publishing house, their job is to work with, they have a sales and marketing team that will then, they already have relationships with those locations, and they will go out on your behalf and to get your stories into into those libraries, into the schools, and into the major retailers. So, quick example, when I moved from, because we were originally with Ingram Spark, when I moved Running Wild to IPG, I saw this huge increase in ebook sales. And when I dug into it, I realized it was because they had a pre-existing deal with some of the major ebook providers for libraries, and they immediately picked up my entire back catalog, right? So it's something that you want to be aware of in terms of where do you want your stories to be represented. Make sense? Okay. I am going to pause for a second and see if there's any. I'm going to move on to self-publishing in a minute. Any questions so far? Okay. Actually, you know what? Because there's some great questions about vanity presses. I'm gonna hit vanity next, and then I'll go into self-publishing. Cool. Okay. Oh wait, I think I saw. Did I see a hand raise in the room, or no? Someone was just stretching.
I was just agreeing with you.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, so vanity presses. So vanity presses, that basically means it is a press that they are going to publish your work and you're going to pay for all of it. It's not, so vanity presses, they will provide sales and marketing. Again, you're going to pay for the sales and marketing. Unfortunately, there are a lot of scammers out there for vanity. It's another one that if someone approaches you and says, I can do everything, I can get your book published for you, I'll get it out to the world, just pay me $50,000. If I were you, I would have choked on my coffee or whatever it is that I'm drinking, and I would run away, right? Because oftentimes that's where you're going to see a good number of scammers. Because a lot of what they're promising, like if they'll say, hey, I'll make you a bestseller. You can actually work the system on Amazon so that your book will show up among the bestsellers. You just need to know how to do the meta tagging, and you need to call your cousins and say, hey, I need you all to buy my book between 5 p.m. and 5:05. So that it'll look like there's this huge jump in sales, and your book will temporarily, long enough for you to get a screenshot, show as it being in like the top, right? And that's basically what a lot of these vanity presses are doing. That they're gaming the system on your behalf. Now, mind you, you can game the system too. Does that really benefit you? In my opinion, not. I think maybe 15 years ago it would have, because not everybody understood the algorithms that go into like the Amazons of the world. And so when you would say, hey, I was an Amazon bestseller, people would go, oh, that's amazing, right? But now, because it's so commonly known how to game the system with Amazon, it doesn't have the weight. It doesn't carry the credibility that it used to. Let's see. It's so I think that answered so Kathleen said for either small or major publishers, take books, and I'll do that in a second. What makes you established? Honestly, my personal opinion of what makes you established is you keep on going, right? I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small publishers, independent publishers, and even like mid-size that exist that they go out of business within the first year, if not 2 years. And oftentimes it's because the people who start that publisher, they don't, or that publication, they don't realize all of the work and money that goes into it. And I want to say it's like 50% or something like that go out of business within the first 2 years. And then within another 5 or 8, it's like 30 to 50% of those go out of business. So that's another one that you want to see what their longevity is. You want to see how their books do. It doesn't necessarily have to be sales. It could be, do their books continue to get acknowledgement within the industry? I mean, sales are always great, don't get me wrong, but I think that's really what you need to look for. So I'll keep saying throughout this, like, do your homework, but it's really, really important. Kathleen, I think I just answered your question about the difference between a vanity press and a hybrid. Vanity, you're paying for everything and they're providing the tools. Hybrid, you're paying part of it and they're providing the tools, but most likely you're also going to be more engaged in like marketing and publicity. Yeah, Marcos says vanity presses ask you to pay a ton of money up front, but usually the return is either microscopic or non-existent. Exactly. We actually, and he's been told to avoid them. Yeah, I mean, I have one author who's with us now. He had started off with a vanity press. He's actually a very good writer. And I think they had promised him, huge sales. And in reality, they more so were regional. So he was seeing a decent amount of sales, more like local to where he was, but they didn't have the distribution to get it out there. And they actually didn't have the means to publicize his work other than within that region. So, let's see. Kathleen says, thank you, Marco, but some of the vanity press tell you, but you don't see when you actually sign up. I admit, I'm not sure. Kathleen, can you do me a favor? Can you go off mic? I'm not sure I understood that comment. I just want to make sure I understand.
Go ahead, Kathleen, unmute and ask your question, please.
Yeah, my hands don't go as fast as my head. It was the case of, I've had them tell friends of mine that they're going to give them all this advertisement. They're going to do all this for them, but they want all this money. And I'm telling them, no, don't do it. I have one older gentleman that he wrote his books, published them through, and he got one book at an office price.
Oh boy.
It was others' books. In order to go and sell them or give them to family, he had to pay full price.
Wow.
He paid close to $10,000.
Wow.
And when I told him, no, this is what you do, and get out of that, go to KDP and load it yourself, and this is where you can get it at author's price. And he was just stunned that he could do that. There's so many innocent people that become writers, and they haven't faced a lot of things that have to be questioned.
Yep, agreed. Great comments. Thank you. Kay says, agree heartily with what Lisa said about gaming the system. I've seen friends do it exactly as she described. Everyone buy my book on Kindle on this date and time, then using the screenshot of ranking to prove how successful they are. This is not success. Agreed. I mean, again, it's going to go down to what's your objective? What do you want to accomplish, right? What are your goals? I mean, maybe that was the person's goal and that was it, right? I mean, I don't know. What happens if a small press goes out of business? Do you reclaim your rights to the book? And Marco and Michelle, no, that is actually a fabulous question. So here's the thing. And Kay said she had a small press suggest purchase the copyright from them when they went bankrupt. I simply waited out the 7 years. So it's totally based on your contract, right? I actually really advocate you going to the Writers Guild of America, and they offer free services to have a lawyer review the contract. I am going to say, I suggest also taking their feedback to a certain extent with a grain of salt, because a lot of this, again, is going to come back to what your personal goals are. What do you want to achieve? So like I had one, like we don't actually have, it's almost like we're more so licensing the right to publish your work. You retain your copyright. And I've actually worked with a few lawyers on our contracts, right? And I had one author who went to the Writers Guild of America, and I don't think the lawyer had seen that kind of language before, and they had said, you want to have them add that the contract ends after 7 years. And I said, well, how does that benefit you? If you're still keeping your copyright, I'm just getting the right to publish your work and potentially the right to represent you to have the book licensed elsewhere. Like so how does this actually, how is this good for you? And I said, go back to the lawyer and ask him, right? Like, what's the benefit for this if this is the structure of the contract? And they came back and said, you know what, you're right, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would I do that, right? Again, you're welcome to do it. That kind of language, that kind of information within the contract, again, that's very old school. It's where I have the copyright for your work and I'm publishing your work. It totally makes sense, right? For it to be like 5 years with a potential to extend. And a very common language is 7 years and the potential to extend. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, again, have someone review the contracts that are presented to you and make sure that it actually represents you in a way that you get what it is that you are looking for and it best represents you. Michelle's like, well, they do call it practicing law after all. That is true. They absolutely do. Let's see. Part of success is having steady sales over time, not just within the first month of your new book releasing. Actually, so that's another really interesting thing. And Marco, thank you for saying that. There was an article. Actually, I think there were two. One was with New York Times, another was with Publishers Weekly. And I believe it was written by an agent who has a lot of visibility. No, actually, change that, by an author who had a lot of visibility to sales. And what she found out was that for up and coming authors, oftentimes your first book and your second book will not sell well, but your third book, because you've been around for a little while, you've built a reputation, and you're starting to build a fan base. By your third book, that's when all of a sudden you'll see a pickup in sales, not just of that third book, but you'll see it for past books. And if you actually look at some, iconic figures who write series, that is absolutely what you saw, right? Like J.K. Rowling, her first book was actually published with a small press. And yes, I'm talking about Harry Potter. It was published with a small press. They only published 3,000 books up front. At first, it really did not sell. She worked her tushy off, and as it grew, she then got her copyright, her rights back, and then basically went with a larger press, and then it blew up in EMEA, and then when it by the time it came to the United States, it had already been a phenomenon, right? And then Kathleen says, each state has their own laws too, right? Correct. And again, this is going to go back to, you always want to make sure that before you sign a contract, especially if you don't understand the language, right? Like if you're reading it and you're like, well, this kind of sounds cool, but I'm not quite sure what they're talking about, you go to a lawyer, I mean, I have the benefit that part of my day job, I review a lot of contracts. I mean, far too many for anyone's head not to spin. So, I'd say, 90% of what I see in front of me, I understand, and I can see when someone's sort of playing a system, right? But not everyone is blessed to have that kind of visibility to those kinds of things. So, use the resources that are available to you so that you best understand. And Kevin says, that's what I found. Each time I start publishing a new story, it drives sales to my, absolutely. So an aside, I write a series about lycanthropes, which it just means shapeshifter or werewolves, right? And I have 2 books out so far. I'm working on the 3rd, which is why I'm not there, which kills me because A, I love being in front of you guys, and B, I love Mexican food. So I'm very upset that we're going to lunch. But anyway, um, when this book came out, it was interesting because the last book, because this was just too cool. And that is, I mean, you will see that, right? I mean, there, J.K. Rowling is an easy example just because I've just mentioned it. But there are tons of others of examples like that. So thank you, Kevin.
We do have a question in the room.
Oh,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Jerry.
Hi, my question is
Jerry, speak into the mic.
into the mic.
No pressure.
I can drop my voice.
No, you're
a little
perfect.
bit.
You don't have to move it.
Is
Just
that
perfect.
good? Is that good?
You're good.
China Clipper calling Alameda. This is China Clipper. I'm wondering if there's an alternative to Amazon. I'm self-published on Amazon. They don't take phone calls. They did a year or 2 ago. They don't do it anymore for my. You can call them, but you end up on sales of things, not writing matters. And on the writing matters, as representatives, I consider them barbarians. They don't. They've done a couple of hatchet jobs where they're saying the visuals on my cover are not. You didn't do them correctly. I did do them correctly. I have a guy who runs marketing and internet, and he has access to all that stuff. And they blocked my ebook sales because of it. And I have a folder like an inch or 2 thick trying to deal with them. And there was another one about submitting a review. I got a 5-star review right off the first time. And they had on where the reviews are, it goes submit reviews here. They don't put in, by the way, only people who purchase books on Amazon can submit those reviews. And then they did a hatchet job with me on that, and they were hard to communicate, even get any kind of human being. They have communities out there in the hinterlands that were nice enough. A couple of people responded. But like, is Barnes and Noble a good alternative to marketing a book as opposed to Amazon? Is there anybody in a situation? I know the piece is that I have has promise. I know it's fresh and it's gotten a 5-star review from the Reader's Favorite Book Contest, and also won a finalist for Best First Novel Literary Fiction. And the word on the street is that men are not writing literary fiction. Oh, it was in the New York Times. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's my question. Thank you. Or question.
That's interesting. So actually, it's a nice segue to self-publishing, right? So self-publishing, the do-it-yourself route. So that's where you have complete control, right? So you have control over the story, you have control over the content, you have control over editing or no editing, up to you. You have control over the cover, you have control over marketing, you have control over publicity. To the point that was mentioned previously, you're going to be limited in terms of the platform that you are able to actually self-publish on. Typically, if you're going to publish with Amazon, I think Amazon used to have a print-on-demand option. I don't know if they still do. They do? Okay. Ingram Spark. So Ingram Spark is both print-on-demand or as well as ebook. Amazon, I believe their distribution is quite limited. Ingram Spark, their distribution is, I think they recently were able to get into Baker and Taylor. So for those who may not know, Baker and Taylor is the sole distributor for schools in North America. So your distributor has to have a relationship with Baker and Taylor. Otherwise, they're not going to pitch the book to any schools. They act more like a warehouse than a distributor. But they have the sole contract for North American schools. So far, does that make sense? I know that especially can be confusing. No, it did not. Okay. So what I mean by that is, and I found this out when I used to be with Ingram Spark. So I was wondering why I couldn't get my books into schools and I couldn't get them into libraries. And I thought at first it was because we rarely print hardback. And it's because the cost behind it is insane. And unless you're able to do like a bulk print run. So I actually was able to get in touch with someone at Baker and Taylor, and I was surprised. He was very honest with me. He was like, the reality is we basically we'll keep as many books as you want in our warehouse, but we don't actively go out to schools. We don't actively go out to libraries and basically pitch to those libraries. Because remember, schools, you're not going to go to an elementary school and pitch a hardcore horror novel. They're not going to have that to the kids. You're not going to go to a middle grade school and pitch erotica. That's not going to happen. Well, they don't do that kind of management that like one of the big distributors would do. They just simply have the books sitting in their warehouse. So it's very passive. The only reason they even took my phone call was because we had already been around for a long time and we'd already had, sales in the thousands. So it was like, okay, some people may actually be looking for this, but that's why he had that side conversation with me. So I understood that even though I independently, as an independent press, could get my books into Baker and Taylor, it did not mean that they were going to do anything with it. So he was the one who actually advocated to me to find out if I could get representation by one of the big three distributors. Does that make more sense? Okay. So, and so that's, and like same with Draft to Digital. Draft to Digital, I believe, is only ebook. You're not going to get hardback. You're not going to get paperback. It is not. Kathleen's shaking her head no. Okay. Yeah, they only do ebook and paperback, and they're exploring audio. Honestly, you can do audio on your own now with ACX. Again, it's going to have limited distribution. It'll distribute across Apple, Amazon, and there's a third platform where the books can be found. But I mean, if you wanted to, again, you could totally do that. The other big benefit of self-publishing is it's immediate, right? When you decide that you want this book online or you want it available, that baby's available. Versus small press, hybrid, and versus the others, a big house is going to have a longer lead time in terms of getting it to market. From what I understand, it's usually 2 to 3 years. Small press also has to follow especially if they are with one of the big distributors, they also have a long lead time. So, for example, we have to submit our books to IPG, our distributor. It's 9 to 12 months before the publication date. And there's a variety of reasons for this. But if we don't hit that magic number, that magic date, then we don't have representation by the sales and marketing team. Now, I had an author who was absolutely adamant that her book had to be out within, it was like 4 months, right? And I said, physically, I can do that, but you have to understand what that means to you. And she was like, nope, I am too old for this BS. Damn it, it needs to come out tomorrow. So I was like, all right, we'll have it come out on the date that you specified. Well, it did not sell nearly as well as she had thought it would. And honestly, that was a big reason, is she did not have the advocacy. She didn't have the backing of that sales and marketing team. So small presses are with large distributors and the large houses, just to back up a little bit. Like I'm actually going to be presenting 20 titles that we have coming out in the fall of this year to the sales and marketing team at the end of March. And my job is to give them the information to make them excited about these books, to make them excited about the authors, so that they then want to take that to their contacts for whatever region, whatever country, whatever, like large box. So large box is a Costco, right? That they work with on a regular basis, so that your books are bought, like the pre-orders are higher. Make sense? Okay. I know I just gave you a lot. Again, I later it's probably at this point like, oh my God, the hell is she talking about? Okay. All right. I'm going to take a pause and take any question one might have right now.
There was a question a little bit earlier from,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to handle it now, from Kelly Hemingway, asking for a friend. So at 10:33, if you want to look at that
yes.
one. I don't know if you want to handle
Thank
that one now.
Let me see. Thank you for that. Okay.
By the
Okay.
way, your internet is a little bit spotty. You are breaking up off and on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, thank you. If you publish with a hybrid contract runs out, or or stop publishing it, and you want to now self-publish it, do you need to redo the ISBN, or is it permanent with the book? So this actually goes back to a question that came up earlier. Like, if you independent published or hybrid published, can you then, will a small press or a big house pick it up? Yes, it happens all the time. And typically what happens is they will then ask you to add some content or take some content out, and they'll put a new cover on it. They'll put a new ISBN. So the ISBN, that's that barcode on the back. And then they'll repackage it, and sometimes they'll even change the title. That makes it a new version, which is what gives it a new ISBN in essence, right? So they won't publish it as is. They will publish it with all this new packaging and so on, so that because what they're really buying when they do that, they're not buying the book, they're buying you as the brand, and they're buying your stories as a brand. Make sense? Okay. And then I want to actually go back to the part of the question that was asked earlier around self-publishing. You know, like I guess the New York Times did an article that, you know, men don't write literary fiction anymore. I would love to see that article, because like the National Book Award winner, Percival Everett, he won it for James, which is, it's a literary novel. And when I go to, and my background is more so in literary, and in the literary world, when I go to like literary conferences, it's primarily white men, historically, who are the ones, you know, like teaching the classes and so on. That is changing. But like those who hold the keys to the castle are typically white men. And that was actually also a New York Times article in 2021 that got a lot of attention, and it actually caused this huge flux in the publishing world, where houses started actually creating imprints specific for alternative voices, because it was so egregious. Also understand that the reason you don't see as big of sales in the literary world is because it just doesn't sell. And when I first started out, I took a class at the Philadelphia Writers Conference, and I took an advanced workshop where they read like, 20 pages of whatever it is that you're writing. And I think I was in my like late 20s or something like that. And the instructor pulled me aside and he was like, Lisa, I love your writing. It's gorgeous, but you're not going to get a book deal until you're 50. And I was like, I think I'm okay with that. Like 50 is not too horrid, But it was because and his point was literature doesn't sell. Literary does not sell. And he was speaking from experience because he didn't actually get a book deal until he switched from writing literary to writing commercial fiction, meaning like I think he was writing like a mystery series. Now, mind you, it was still literary. The definition of literary is that it's character driven, right? But it was in a mystery structure. But he could get a book deal, a 3-book deal, by writing in a mystery structure and framing it around mystery. So just some information that hopefully is advantageous to you. So Marco has another question. A friend of mine who is a full-time self-published writer, he said that self-pubbed writers write for readers, whereas traditional pub writers write for editors. What are your thoughts on that? That's the most bizarre comment I've seen. So understand, commercial large houses, they're obtaining work for pre-existing fan bases. So they have data on the number of books that sell within a specific market. And so when they're acquiring books that they know will fit that market. And that causes huge gaps in the industry, right? Small presses, it'll depend on what the mission and vision is for that small press. The same thing with hybrid, right? It'll depend on who they're targeting. So, I mean, it's an interesting comment. It's just, I mean, it's possible that there are hybrid and small presses that you're really writing for an editor. But, I don't know anyone who says, man, I don't want any readers. That would suck, right? Like that just doesn't make sense to me. But, yeah. I'm actually going to go on for a minute, if that's okay, because one thing I want to also make clear, there are huge success stories, and I want to say almost every example I just gave, right? And those success stories, you're also going to find these authors, they're not only publishing in that on that one format, right? They're not only so let me give it some examples. So for like self-published, one of the biggest ones is Hugh Howey, who wrote Wool. He had published Wool on Amazon. It sold, I want to say in like the millions, and then it got acquired by one of the big houses. Another one is E.L. James, who initially self-published 50 Shades of Grey, and then that again blew up, and she went on to publish, with one of the big houses. And also Andy Weir, which I actually remember when this happened, when Amazon first started Kindle, right, their self-publishing platform, they had a contest, and Andy's book, The Martian, won. And that was another one that it just blew up, and he then got picked up by basically Penguin Random House. Another one in terms of, I mean, I don't need to give you some of the big 5 publishers that it's like, oh my God, but obvious ones, Stephen King, small press, success stories, again, J.K. Rowling, right? That's an infamous one. I want to say Roxane Gay, so she's actually more on the literary side. She published with an Untamed State. And then, once that became huge, she then went on to A Large House. And then hybrid, a few examples are like Rachel Hollis, Girl Wash Your Face. She initially used the hybrid that as a baseline, as a platform for her to move on to other Now, what I think is more important to talk about is how all these authors actually also use, like I said, many of the platforms. So some of your local favorites would be like a Scott Sigler. So Scott started off basically doing a live stream on LinkedIn, publishing like chapter by chapter each week, and then self-publishing it. And it's sold. I think it actually sold in the millions when he packaged it, and he sued the New York Times to be put on the bestseller list because the official definition for the New York Times for a bestseller is that it sold 6,000 copies that week. Well, he blew that out of the water, right? And then they tried to say, well, we have this magical, calculation that, it's, we can't share it with you, but that's why you're not on any of our, bestseller lists. And obviously that got thrown out, right? But that's also why it went from one New York Times bestseller list to a hardback, ebook, paperback, and I think they actually have it for audio as well. So, he has been a huge influence on the publishing industry because of that. But he also publishes with the likes of Blackstone, and he publishes with Alcon Publishing, right? So, and I believe he actually got picked up by one of the big houses. So again, a great example of someone who started in one venue, did really, really well, and then, decided to play in other spaces. Another great example is Jonathan Mayberry, who I know is also another local favorite. Excuse me. He actually started off as a journalist and then went to more like creative nonfiction with some small houses. He actually currently is the executive editor for Weird Tales, which is considered a small publisher. We published a couple of his works as well. He basically bases, I know both Scott and Jonathan, and I think Kevin J. Anderson, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Kevin, they base on where they're going to publish the work on the commercial viability. So like a lot of the stuff that like Jonathan might come to me with, or Scott might talk to me about, they'll talk to me about it because they know it won't sell with their big house, right? It's something that's like, it's different, but it's something they really wanted to get out to the world. And so they thought it would be a good fit with Running Wild. And we actually do get approached quite a bit by people who've already been New York Times bestsellers, or they've already had big house representation, but they know that whatever it is that this story that they've been working on, it's been like their baby. They know that their agent won't be able to sell it anywhere, right? So they'll come to us and see if it's something that we would be interested in publishing. All right, so that's my soapbox. Marco says, I thought it was 9,000 to 10,000 sales in a week. So the last time I saw numbers, USA Today was 5,000 book sales in a week, and New York Times was 6,000 book sales in a week. Now, mind you, that's a minimum, because if you think about it, I'm sure there are quite a whole lot more that hit minimum that minimum threshold before it can make the list, right? So just because you sold 6,000 copies, paperbacks in a week, it doesn't mean that you're going to hit the New York Times bestsellers list. It means that you are now considered viable to be on that list, and you're still going to be in competition in essence with everybody else on the list, or who has hit that minimum. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool. All right. So with that, wow, it's 11 o'clock. I'd love to open this up for any questions that you may have, or if I cause complete confusion. So
There is still a question in the chat. It was at 10:49 from Kelly, and she asked, what is more profitable, royalties from publishers or Kindle Unlimited per page?
oh wow, that's a great question. It's going to depend on the contract you have with your publisher. So like our contract is typically for long form, you're usually going to get probably $200 to $400 up front, and then we give you 40% of net revenue. If you go commercial, you will probably get a couple of thousand up front. Again, it's going to depend on the genre or the genre that you are writing in, and what their sales team has projected that most likely the sales are going to be. But then their royalties, royalty really, I don't know how many commercial publishers actually define royalty, but royalty just means it's like a percentage of whatever it was that sold over and above what they put into the money they put into it, right? And usually royalties are only like, I don't know, 15 to 20%. Yeah. So again, that's another one that's going to depend on a ton of factors. Like, so for us, our deal with I'm going to give you far too much information that some people are going to leave screaming, and that's fine. You know, I actually had an editor that not an editor, an agent I was negotiating with, and he revenue associated with ebooks. He thought, well, ebooks revenue, right? And the reality is,
Lisa, I hate to interrupt you. You've got to go back on that because you were so unstable. We were getting like every third word when you started about negotiating with an agent. So if you could back up just a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Our agent, and he wanted the author to get 80% of the revenue, gross revenue. And gross revenue means that's all the money that comes in associated with the title for all ebooks. And his thought process for that was, to mine, there was no upfront costs. And if there's no upfront costs, then that means that they'll get more money. But our deal with our distributor is that they get 25% of net revenue, and then they actually have complete they have control over what the wholesale price will be for ebook and for anything that they distribute on our behalf. And so, what I mentioned earlier, when we first went to IPG, that we had this huge influx of sales for ebooks to libraries. Their ongoing deal with Hulu for libraries is that it's typically at 89 to 95% off the retail price. So that means I'm lucky if I'm going to see 5 cents, but it gets the ebooks out to those libraries, which is what I want, right? That's one of my personal goals, or that's one of my company's goals. So it's always going to go back to what is the deal that you have cut or your agent has cut with whoever it is that you are working with, and making sure you've got someone really who understands publishing and the world of publishing, and they understand those kinds of complexities.
We have another couple questions in the chat. Mark, do you want to unmute and ask your your question, or is it okay if I repeat?
Fine to repeat.
Okay, he's asking, what's the order of profitability by genre?
Oh, wow. I'll be honest, I don't know. And part of the challenge with that is, and even answering that question, is A, where are you selling it? B, what format are you using? C, who are you partnering with? So, like, I know for a fact Germany, thrillers sell really well in Germany. So it's like it far outsells any other genre. It used to be the top sellers. This is going to sound so weird. It used to be the top sellers were romance, thriller, and horror. And I don't know if it's just because they could churn out a lot, faster, meaning there was a greater representation of those genres or what. But they used to be the hot ones. Now understand too, because there was such an influx of those genres, usually the price point associated with it, meaning the retail price on the cover, was a lot lower than you might find for other genres. But they could also do it because they were able to do higher print runs. So.
Thank you.
We have a question in the room. Hold on.
My first question is for Lisa. What kind of microphone are you using? Because you actually came through pretty clear. I was just curious.
My best microphone is, believe it or not, it's my MacBook.
Yeah, it's it actually is very clear. A couple of points of clarification. I've got 3 books on how to get published on Amazon. I'm not an authority on it, but I know a bunch. I could steer you in the direction of those books. Gentleman mentioned he had difficulties with Amazon. And one thing about Amazon, it changes all the time. And I read a lot of these books on how to publish, how to write. By the time the ink's dry on the book, it's changed on Amazon, the procedures. You do not have to purchase a book to review it. However, you have to have an Amazon account and you have to spend like at least $50 a year or something to that effect to be able to do a review. A verified purchase is a different type of review. Obviously, you bought the book and they give you that disclaimer. So for self-help on Amazon, you have to be persistent, and you can do emails. And you go into the help thing, you got to get a live person to email you. So and sometimes they will take phone calls. And then on the ranking thing Lisa mentioned earlier, like a couple of my books made #1 on Amazon. However, it was in a category. It wasn't for sales of all Amazon. I wish it was. So I would specify, like my golf book, children's golf. It was #1 for golf coaching. So I clarify.
Hey, John, can
Yeah.
you ask questions up there? And you know what? We might have you back for Amazon
Yeah,
ranking
I just wanted to
tips, okay?
clarify because there was some discussion about Amazon, and Lisa mentioned it also. So my 2 questions for Lisa are, I was approached by Archway Publishing. It's a division of Simon & Schuster. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, they're considered a vanity press.
Oh, great. Well, their pitch to me was, if you hook up with us, minimal money, it's not a lot of money. However, it will be screened by a reviewing board for Simon & Schuster. But they're not really doing anything that I don't do myself. And then my other question, Lisa, is military bases and AFIs. I haven't cracked that nut yet. Do you have any guidance on that?
On military bases and what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's called AFIs. It's their exchange network.
I'll be honest, I have no idea. I can ask my account executive at IPG, see what they say.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, either in the room or June? This is your, or on Zoom. This is your opportunity to ask an actual acquiring editor questions. So now's the time. You've got her captive. Okay, here comes Greg.
Hi. Let's assume I'm stupid enough to try to be a writer. We all know there's no money in writing. There's no way you can get published and make $1 zillion. My question for you is, if I have something that I've written that I think is just great, how much is it going to cost me if I go with your company, and what can I expect that money to go for?
Got it.
That's my question.
We don't charge you anything. You make money. You make a little bit. I mean, it's only, upfront, it's a couple $100. Once it earns out, it's 40% of net revenue. Typically net revenue, you usually have to sell, I want to say it's usually between like 500 and 1,000 paperbacks. And as I mentioned before, it varies. It depends on what the deal is that our distributor makes with whomever. Yeah. So I think I answered your question.
Good question.
So
Good
the
answer.
The short answer is that Running Wild Press is a publisher. They pay you, that you don't pay them. They're not a vanity press. Lisa, tell them a little bit about your publishing timelines, how far in advance you are right now, because I know you're not acquiring anything prior to like 2026. Am I right?
Yeah. So thank you, Michelle. So Running Wild, we publish, we actually have 3 imprints. We have Running Wild that publishes great stories that don't fit Lena. So it's basically cross genre. We publish, Rise publishes great genre stories written by people of color and those of other underrepresented groups. And we also have Monstrous Books, which is run by James Aquilone. And that publishes, it's like dark fiction with humor and a little bit more of a literary bend, I guess you could say, to it. And he publishes graphic novels and novels. He actually just started a new series called The Kolchak, based on the old detective series on TV. He got the rights to that, so he's doing a graphic novel series for that. How we work is we have a core team of about 8 people, and we have a bevy of additional individuals that we bring on a contract basis. And so what we do is we typically have an acquisition session, I want to say about once a year. It used to be more frequent than that. But honestly, our last acquisition session, I think we had like 1,700 submissions, and 300 of them were viable. And what I mean by viable is that all of our acquisition editors agreed that they were cool. These were cool books, and it would be a good representation of one of our imprints. The problem is that we only publish between 30 and 40 books a year, and that's in total. So there was no way that we would be able to physically get through 300 submissions. So that's when things came in, like, does the author have a platform? Is this someone we've worked with before? So we know, we're familiar with working with them. Believe it or not, we've had authors with whom we've acquired that came in and said, I'm not doing any publicity. I'm not doing any marketing. I write for the love of writing. I don't have to do any of this. It's going to sell like hotcakes as soon as it hits the ground floor. I think it's sold like 5 books, right? Becky's laughing, as you should. As you absolutely should. And then we've had authors who came in and said, hey, I've got 5,000 followers on TikTok, which I'm not sure how well known this is, but believe it or not, those two have, I think it's between 5,000 and 15,000, followers on specific platforms, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. They actually have greater influence on the people who follow them than those who have like 100,000 followers. And the reason for that is typically those individuals, they actually already have relationships. They have real relationships with the individuals who follow them. And so because they have greater credibility and they actually have some type of relationship with the people who follow them, they actually do sell more books on your behalf if they say, oh, I love this book. Again, because the person who has 150,000 followers or, you know, 1 million followers, they're known to basically be a sales platform, right? So we actually pay attention to that, again, only in terms of, you know, we know this is something we want to acquire, and, you know, is this something that we want to represent, right? And I hate to say this too, and Michelle's, I think, familiar with this. I did a panel for StokerCon a couple years ago, and I wanted to call it Don't Be a Jackass, and they told me I wasn't allowed to do it. But so we negotiated and it became How to Work with an Editor. And the reason I say that is because, I mean, you never want to be a jackass. I think I actually used greater profanity in my pitch for the panel, but the reason that you want to be more collaborative and you want to have an open mind when you're working with an editor is because, I mean, we all need to support one another. I advocate that 100%. And I mean, more than you, I'm very much into collaboration. Let's just put it that way. But if you have a reputation for being a jerk and you proudly have this banner on yourself that you are a jerk and God damn it, no one can top you, and you're really not nice to your editor and you're not nice to your publisher and you're not nice to the other people you work with, guess what? They're going to remember that. And like the bottom line, whenever you're working with anybody else, and by the way, I know writing is an isolated, in some ways, perspective or role, but the reality is you're gonna have to interact with other people at some point. So, you know, when they are acquiring, they're gonna remember if you were a jackass. And especially if they're in a situation like we are, which we have a blessing to be in, that if there are 300 books that we're like, oh my gosh, these are fabulous, and we can only bring in 30 to 40, then that is going to be taken into account, right? Just to be honest, you know. Now, mind you, you as an author, you should remember if that publisher or that editor was a jackass, because guess what? You don't want to work with them again. At least if I were you, I wouldn't want to, right? So it's true across the board. Anyway, so get back to it. So we go through this acquisition session. We make pitches based on what I just described each imprint has represents, and then you know, we make offers. Once after the negotiation's done, we have the contract signed, then we will go through and start assigning editors to books. Now, again, because this is a contract by contract basis, it means there may be a longer lead time between when we acquire the book and you're assigned an editor. And again, it depends on availability. Now, one nice thing that we do is I upfront will offer, tell me if there are books in our catalog, or if there's an editor that we typically work with that you would love to work with, because I will approach them first and see if they're available and if they're willing or if they're interested in working with you on your work. The reason that's important, to me at least, is you're not going to get that with a big house. A lot of other publishers, they're not going to offer that to you. And honestly, that can make a huge difference in terms of the final cut of the title that you have. And just an aside, I have a dear friend. He's a huge award winner, a huge bestseller, and his book the editor left that publishing house again with a huge publisher, and the new editor was very junior, and she just didn't get it, for lack of a better term. And he left the house. They refused to, and she was really not nice about it. And they refused to change the editor. And so he actually went to a house where he knew the editor, and is very happy publishing his work at that other major publisher. So, and just a real example of why, you want to make sure you have a relationship with that editor who understands what you're doing in your work, right? So then the actual time for editing, it really depends on the piece. Sometimes it's a month. We have one example where it took 2 years. Mind you, that was an agreement between the editor and the author. They just kept brainstorming new ways to approach different aspects of the title of the story. But the bottom line is, once the editor and the author agree the work is done, then it goes to our production manager. She then takes the author through the process of book design, getting the cover done, your acknowledgments page, all of that, whole 9 yards. She will work with you on marketing. We actually have I should actually probably revisit this. I did a workshop on marketing and publicity for authors a couple of years ago. We have that recording. And so we make that available to authors. Templates around marketing, publicity, we make all of that available to our authors. We actually send the book out to all the major reviewers, major bloggers, and offer them obviously for review. We then send it to our distributor, our product manager. She will then come back to you once everything's in place and, all the designs done, so forth and so on, and ask you, okay, starting with this date, here are recommended dates to actually have your book made available. Do you have a preference? So the starting date for that, as I had inferred previously, is actually what's given to us by our distributor, that we have to have the book to them by a specific date in order for it to be represented by the sales and marketing team. Typically that date, so like the last date we could have something in to IPG for 2025, the end of 2025, like December, was September 15th, 2024. So that's almost a year lead time. Actually, it is. It's a year lead time that they require for us to have everything into them. And that is something that you're going to find with any of the major distributors. And then again, you'll have the benefit of the sales and marketing team. I actually recommend all of our authors to get a publicist minimally as an advisor for the best way for you to approach your marketing and sales, your own publicity, optimally, to really kind of, be that engine for you in like a more local and regional manner.
So just to give people an idea, when you're dealing with a traditional publisher such as yourself, from the time that they are, you say, yeah, we want to buy your book, until it actually comes out, is approximately how long?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it? It was a little unstable.
Not a problem. So let's say that you acquire a book and you say, yes, we want to buy your book. From that point until it actually comes out, approximately how long is that process? I think she's frozen. Lisa, are you with us? Are you with us, Lisa? So the question again was, from the time, let's say that you acquire a book, you say, I want to buy your book. From that point until it actually comes out, launches and comes out, approximately how long is that process?
Minimally 18 months. typically probably closer to like 2.5 years.
And do you find that's pretty much typical of the industry? Hang in there with her for a second. She's trying to get everything, I think, up and running on her end. She may have to come back in. Oh, there she is. We can see you and we're waiting patiently. Can you see us?
Yes. Okay, cool. I can hear you now too. So Kevin said, is that typical within the industry? My understanding is if you're with a major distributor, yeah, that's typical.
We keep losing you. Are you there now?
I'm here. I don't know if you can
Okay,
hear me.
good. We heard that that was pretty typical. That was the last thing that you said. Any other questions? We're honing in here on 11:30. So is there any additional questions that anyone has for Lisa?
And we take unagented work, by the way. So also understand an agent's purpose is, the bottom line is to make money, right? So they're going to represent specific types of books, and they're going to represent specific types of stories, and they're probably going to pick up something because they know, or they're pretty sure that they already know a publisher who'll pick it up. So if your book gets rejected, don't take it personally. It may has more to do with that than it does with your writing or with your story.
Okay, I'm looking, there's a lot of head nodding in the room. Everyone wants to clap. I can see them starting. Do you have any final words for us, Lisa?
I hope you can hear me. Don't
Yes,
give
we can.
up.
We can hear you.
Bottom line, don't give up. Understand why you're writing, why you're telling stories. Understand what your goals are, and just really do what you're doing now. Do your homework, find out how things work, and also understand that things are constantly changing, right? So bottom line, just do not give up.
Thank you. That's great advice. Absolutely. Again, I appreciate so much you coming to speak to us today. Everybody, a round of applause again. This is, I think, the third time that you've spoken for Diamond Valley over the last 5 years. And every time she comes, different topics, always wonderful, always just chock full of information. So as soon as we get this up on the website on YouTube, you'll be able to review it and hopefully pick up all the things that you might have missed the first time through. Our next meeting is March 15th, back in this room. And our guest speaker is Ash Bishop. I know Lisa knows Ash. Yep. And he's going to be speaking on the role of antagonists in storytelling. And he is going to be coming up. He lives in San Diego, so he's local. So he'll be in the room with us and going to lunch with us and all of that. Hopefully he doesn't get COVID. And a little background on Ash is Ash is a lifetime reader who loves all genres, especially science fiction, mystery, and fantasy. His first novel, Intergalactic Exterminators, Inc., by the way, great cover on that book, won the prestigious Audie Award for Best Audiobook of 2023 in the category of science fiction. His second novel, The Horoscope Writer, won an Independent Publishers Award at IPPY Award and earned a nomination for a Forward Indies Award for the Best Mystery Novel and is published internationally in multiple languages. So he has 2 books out. And there's Ash. He'll be here, and I'm looking forward to his take on antagonists. We have flyers at the front of the room. It's up on the website now for those of you who want to look at that. Last call for volunteers and to pay your membership. Go online. You can pay there, or you can see Jessica in the back of the room. Any last comments from anyone? So good to see all your faces, and have a wonderful 2025 and just keep writing. Thank you.